So I'm really depressed about what's going on in Pennsylvania. As many of you know, we've been following the Pennsylvania Senate race. As I'll show you in a moment, the control of the U.S. Senate after November, after the midterm elections, could depend on who wins in Pennsylvania because of a number of different dynamics and realities about who's up for reelection and where are there open seats and this type of thing. So we're very interested in who's going to be the next senator from Pennsylvania. On the Democratic side, I have been leaning very heavily, not that I vote in Pennsylvania, but as an opinion, I've been leaning heavily towards John Fetterman, the lieutenant governor. And on the Republican side, the story has been that television doctor Mehmet Oz is running as a Republican. And he has some celebrity. Donald Trump has endorsed him, et cetera. Well, last night, there was a Democratic primary debate and a Republican primary debate. And I found both debates extraordinarily depressing. We're going to look at some clips of the Republican part. I wasn't able to find clips of the Democratic side, but I watched it yesterday. And it was just really depressing. So Fetterman, whose policies I like, seemed disoriented, confused. He was slow to respond. He didn't make any sense. It was a terrible performance where when I watched the Republican debate, my thought was any of the five candidates running on the Republican side would do well against Fetterman. So while I like Fetterman on policy, his debate performance was terrible. In terms of the other candidates on the Democratic side, there was a woman, Khalil, I believe her last name was, and then a younger guy named Malcolm Kenyatta, and then Connor Lamb. Kenyatta had some good answers, but at one point simply said no when asked whether he wants to answer a question. He said no, and it was bizarre. And then Connor Lamb, clearly the most polished in terms of media preparation, but a very uninspiring kind of center-left establishment Democrat. It wasn't like, wow, one of these people would crush a debate against these Republicans. So that was on the Democratic side. It wasn't thrilling, to say the least. On the Republican side, it was straight up sinister disinformation. I mean, just absolutely crazy. And we're going to look at a couple of clips. First of all, the debate opened with an argument over who's really from Pennsylvania based on how long they've been in Pennsylvania. Here's a little bit of that.
70% of Republican voters said the amount of time a candidate has lived in Pennsylvania is important. We begin with Mr. McCormick. You've been campaigning on your Pennsylvania roots, but you have not actually lived in Pennsylvania for the last 15 years. So explain why it seems that you returned to the Commonwealth just in time to run for the U.S. Senate. Mr. McCormick, you have 60 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Oz. Except for your time attending medical school and graduate school, you have not actually lived in the Commonwealth in Pennsylvania. So how do you respond to concerns that you do not know what is best for Pennsylvanians? You have 60 seconds, sir.
So the first question, everybody just talked about how long they had been in Pennsylvania. Okay, I mean, yes, the voters claim they care about it, but it's already not actually substantive. Then there was the Trump sucking up portion of the entire thing where Trump endorsed Dr. Oz. And so Dr. Oz in basically every answer would mention that. But every candidate tried to suck up to Trump. That was the next section.
He went groveling to President Trump. President Trump saw right through him, did not endorse him, and then he endorsed me.
Everything President Trump put in place worked.
The reason Mehmet keeps talking about President Trump's endorsement is because he can't run on his own positions.
President Trump won Pennsylvania.
President Trump endorsed me. President Trump was very clear, I'm America first.
I'm the only person in this race that was appointed by President Trump.
You say that you are America first, and you did so much for President Trump, and yet he rejected you twice.
Thank you, Ms. Barnett. Once again, trying to tell Pennsylvanians something that President Trump does not believe is true.
President Trump doesn't always get the best advice. I am the only conservative voice.
No, you're not.
Dishonest Dave is at it again.
What President Trump did is he put his finger on the fact
President Trump did was respect people who had been othered, forgotten, canceled.
President Trump coined the word MAGA.
I have discussed it with President Trump.
And just like President Trump, that experience is going to make me a better senator.
So much so that President Trump, on his teletown hall,
We need to enforce the policies that worked under the Trump administration.
President Trump saw right through him. He therefore did not endorse Mr. McCormick. He endorsed me.
President Trump's policies.
Trump was able to put together Operation Warp Speed.
We saw under the Trump economy.
All right. So you guys get the picture. So then it was first it was an argument over who's lived in Pennsylvania the longest and long enough. Then it was an argument over which of us is the most liked by Trump and most like Trump. The funniest moment from the entire thing was when Dave McCormick, who seems to be kind of like the second, right up there with Mehmet Oz and Barnett, they seem to be the three frontrunners. He said there's no miracle cure, which I love because, of Dr. Oz's history as a guy promoting all sorts of quack cures. This was probably the funniest moment.
And now he's flip-flopping. And the problem, doctor, is there's no miracle cure for flip-flopping. And Pennsylvanians are seeing right through your phoniness. And that's what you're dealing with. And that's why you're not taking off in the polls.
So that's actually great. I mean, Dr. Oz promoting, drinkable silver and various quack cures of different kinds. So that is actually pretty clever. But these are all absolutely terrible people. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, but if I'm honest, the energy of any of these five candidates likely would come off better in a debate against the four Democratic candidates I saw yesterday. I hate to say it. Here's one last clip where candidate Sands attacks candidate Barnett for how big her margin of loss was in her previous election. And then they argue over who most believes in the 2020 big lie.
In Washington, you can count on me. They did not steal that election by 20 points. She lost her last election to a weak Democrat. John Fetterman is not a weak Democrat. He's strong. I will beat John Fetterman in the fall.
Thank you. I am going to give you 30 seconds to respond, Ms.
Thank you so much for that. Because are you saying that there was absolutely that the 2020 election was above par, that there was no fraud, that there was no issues with that?
Not 20 points.
Are you telling me that it was perfect? And because apparently that's what she's saying. So for all of us in the Republican Party, now we have a candidate on stage, Carla Sand, who is saying that there was absolutely nothing to see in that 2020 election. But beyond that, you say that you are America first,
Okay.
and you did so much for President Trump, and yet he rejected
Thank
you
you,
twice.
Ms. Barnett.
And
Thank
did not
you.
give you that
Ms.
advice.
Sands, Ms. Sands, I'm going to give you 15 seconds quickly to respond to that.
President Trump doesn't always get the best advice.
There were actually times where each candidate was given 10 seconds sometimes to respond. I mean, the format doesn't work. The candidates are lunatics. The topics are absurd. So it's all very, very depressing. Now, why does Pennsylvania matter so much? Well, when you look at 270towin.com, they have a number of different maps that you can look at. If you look at the 2022 consensus map, Pennsylvania is one of only 5 Senate toss-up states. If you look at Sabato's crystal ball, Pennsylvania is one of only 4 toss-up states. If you look at the Cook political map, Pennsylvania is one of 5 toss-up states. And in the Politico map, it's also one of 5 toss-up states. If you run a number of different scenarios and consider them, in a lot of them, Pennsylvania decides whether Democrats control the Senate or whether Republicans control the Senate. And unfortunately, I didn't find any of it particularly exciting. Let me know your thoughts if you watched the debates. One of our longtime sponsors is Vincero Collective. If you don't know Vincero yet, it's the place to go for quality watches, sunglasses, and more. Serious style, undeniable quality, and total versatility put Vincero really at the top of the game, and their newest watch release is no exception. It's the Argo Automatic. It spotlights everything I love about Vincero. I got the Argo Automatic in frost white. This is a dive watch, which is, of course, a staple in the watch world, but I really think Vincero found a way to make this one stand out. I love the gradient blue accent of the hour markers against the solid white face. I really love all of their watches, and I own a bunch, but the Argo is probably my favorite so far. Vincero sunglasses and jewelry and other accessories are awesome too. An excellent way to elevate any outfit. Vincero Collective is giving my audience 15% off all products and free shipping. Go to vincerocollective.com/Pacman and use the code Pacman. The link is down below.